Sitting at nearly the center of Binghamton University is the towering modern library. It pokes high in the sky and can be seen from many miles away. I used to spend a lot of time in the library, but as my years went on, I spent a lot less time there because of one creepy incident. I had to do a research paper for a history class, which took me to the library, where I spent many hours looking over old journals and books on the subject of which my paper was about. I was usually stuck there late into the evening and up until closing time. That was a time of lots of coffee and various caffeinated beverages. One night I was there very late, sitting at a table, typing away and collecting notes, when I heard footsteps moving in the basement area where I was studying. I liked being down there because it was very quiet and nobody bothered me. But then I heard these footsteps. It sounded as if whomever or whatever it was moving around, trying to stay out of my sight. I tried to focus on my work, but the sound of the person or being moving around became very unnerving. I would glance up and think I'd see something, but then I'd just see empty space. Finally, I became frustrated and called out and asked, "Is anybody there?" My words echoed off the walls, and that was the only sound I heard for several moments. And then a book fell to the ground and made a slapping sound. And I bounced over there, but nobody was in the area, and I didn't hear footsteps of anybody running away. Then I turned around and saw a dark shape disappear behind one of the shelves. Again I called out, "Who's there?" And for the second time, I got no answer. This was really starting to freak me out. And then I heard a low, whispering sound that began to build, and it sent a spike of fear up my spine, and my heart began beating exceedingly fast. I looked up again, and I saw the dark shape moving, seemingly just out of my periphery, but I caught little glimpses of it. The sounds began to grow, and I knew one thing: I had to get out of there. I snatched up my laptop and book bag and I ran for the closest door and exited the building as quickly as possible. I got outside and looked back at the building. It was just a normal-looking building. After that, I tried to limit my hours in the library to only daytime and push as much of my research to online. One day I was walking by the library and I swear I heard the same whispering sounds, and I looked up, and there was a dark shape looking down at me from one of the windows. I locked on the shape, and then it just faded away. This gave me one of the biggest scares of my life, and I bolted from the area. People must have thought I was insane, but I just knew I had to get out of there. For the rest of my college days, I spent my time studying at the science library. It was move-in day for all the dorms at Binghamton University, and I was a resident assistant at Smith Hall. Binghamton University sits at the edge of Binghamton, New York, and it's a very lovely and modern campus with a nature preserve right next to it. My job was to help all the students get moved in an orderly fashion and make sure everybody had what they needed to get settled in. But when I arrived for the day, I discovered that the doors to the dorm were locked. This was going to throw a serious monkey wrench into everything. So I had students stack up their stuff near the door and contacted somebody so they could get a janitor to unlock the door. We were all just standing there, twiddling our thumbs and admiring the beautiful weather of the day, when suddenly we heard a crashing sound inside the dorm. At first it sounded far away, but then these pounding and crashing sounds got closer and closer. We all wondered what they were. Some of us thought maybe the janitor was inside doing some kind of renovation or smashing up trash to be carried out, so we were just standing there staring at blank windows, listening to the mayhem. After a few minutes, it got very unnerving, and we all heard some kind of whispering running underneath the sound of the crashing and smashing. We backed away from the building a little, and some of the students even gathered up their belongings in their arms and moved away. I was about to call campus security when a janitor walked up behind me and said, "What are you all standing out here for?" You could have knocked me over with a feather. I looked at the janitor and I said, "I thought you were in there." He looked up at the building and said, "Does it look like it?" The chaotic noises had stopped from the dorm, and he casually walked up and unlocked the door. He made a sweeping gesture for all of us to go inside. We all stood there with uncertain expressions on our faces, and I finally asked the janitor, could he just go inside because we heard these strange noises? The janitor shrugged and walked inside. He moved down one of the hallways and looked around and looked back at us with a puzzled expression. And then he walked out of the building and said something under his breath about kids today and drugs. That seemed to break the mood. I led a couple students inside, and the rest of the movement went exceedingly well. That is until one of the students began to hang a framed photograph on the wall, and as they walked away, it plunged to the ground and smashed into a bunch of pieces. We were all stunned and weren't sure what to do. As the supposed adult in the room, I gathered up a broom and cleaned up the mess. During that year, there would be a few more incidents of things crashing to the ground and what sounded like banging in the walls. I asked to be transferred to another building. I just didn't want to spend another year in that dorm. Directly in front of the main library on the Binghamton campus is a long rectangular fountain that has water pouring off of it 24 hours a day. Right in front of it, sitting next to this fountain, is a Pegasus statue that fits the very modern feel of the Binghamton campus. I like to hang out outside the library on days when the weather permitted and read or just relax. There were benches and lines along the fountain. There was some minor construction going on near the library, and I saw one of the construction workers would take a break every day and just stare at the fountain. I read a great sadness coming off of him as he spent a few moments looking at the rippling water. Now, usually I would just leave somebody like this alone, but something called for me to talk to this man, so I walked over and made a comment about how beautiful the fountain was looking, and he agreed. I asked him if he was okay, and he paused and cleared his throat and said, I'm okay. And then he went on to explain why he stood at the fountain. He said that he was involved in the installation of the fountain, and they'd worked many days just to get it right, pouring the concrete and shaping the stones, etc. And at the end of one day, he looked down and he saw that his wedding ring was missing. He searched the area diligently and came up empty. He came to the conclusion that the ring had probably come off his finger when they were pouring the concrete, and now it would be trapped in the fountain forever. He knew his wife would be very angry at him over losing the ring, so he went out drinking with his buddies to build up the courage to explain what had happened to the ring. When he arrived home, he had found his wife had passed away from an aneurysm, and when he said this, I heard his voice crack a little bit. He went on to say after he recovered from the loss, he came back to the university doing various construction jobs, but he said he would always come back to the fountain and say a little prayer to his wife. One day, he was standing there saying a prayer when the water began to ripple in an abnormal way. And he looked down at the water, and a woman's hand came out of the fountain, and in its palm was the wedding ring. For a second he said he was terrified and almost ran away. But then he shakily reached out and took the ring. And then the hand slowly sank back into the water and disappeared. And he knew he had felt his wife's presence more than any time since she had passed. The man looked at me and there were tears in his eyes. And then he held up his hand and showed me the ring on his finger. I was shocked and I wasn't sure what to say, but I told him I was very sorry for his loss, but also I was happy that he'd found the ring. He gave me a wistful smile and thanked me and went back to work. Over the next few days, I would see him working on campus and making his pilgrimage to the fountain. I would think about the man and his long-gone wife and how they were still connected through the ring and the fountain.